This is the Nation's Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. I want to cover this topic that is out there and trending about an online group called 764 that is targeting kids online. And I'm covering it not for the reason you might think, because I'm sure a lot of you have heard it, but you have to remember that they suck you into the news. They manufacture the news. Of course, there is a deep network of sick, creepy pedos on the internet. There is the dark web. But stories like this are only out there for a reason, because there's so many 764 groups out there. So you have to look at these stories and say, why are they telling me this stuff? Because the news isn't there to inform you. It's there to manipulate you. It is there to condition you into something, right? So what's the natural reaction when you hear about an online group called 764 that's targeting kids? Your natural reaction is, we need to take them down. We need to shut this down. I need to warn my child. And you're also going to be very fearful of what your kids look at online. And all things that are true and should happen. You should be careful and you should be nervous if you have a child that's on the internet. But that's not the point of them putting stories like this out there. These types of stories are how they condition adults into wanting online, no longer anonymous digital IDs. This is how they condition you into it, because you hear stories like this and then you say, you know what? We can't have people anonymous online anymore, because this is what they're doing. They're targeting kids, even though the people who are really responsible behind these deep, dark webs are the government themselves, who are the ones who are buying and selling and doing all of this stuff. And if they wanted to stop the deep web, the dark, what do you think, that they can't? You think VPNs and all this crap keep these people free from governments? The government runs the internet. They could find anybody and anyone doing anything online anytime they want, and they could shut these operations down in the snap of their fingers. But they need operations like this, not just for themselves, but for you, so that they can use your mind and mold it. And one of the things they want, as we all know, is a digital ID. And part of that digital ID is to make it so that nobody can be anonymous online. It's going to start, of course, where they say, look, we're going to have to make it so you can only use the internet if you're 16 and above, as I'll get into later, as they're doing in Australia. And people will say that's great. And I would agree with that kids shouldn't be on the internet. But you got to think further than that, because eventually, of course, we know with what they're trying to create with AI infrastructure and removal of school, that's part of the stuff they're doing now with tearing down the education system, is to get everything online. So kids are going to be online. There's just a temporary holding pattern that they're going to have, where they're going to convince people that a digital ID online will stop crimes, it'll stop cyber attacks, it'll stop deep dark web groups like 764, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, wait a minute. We agreed to this stuff, we're stopping these groups, but now all of a sudden I'm writing online that I don't trust my government and I'm locked out of my bank account. All of a sudden I'm writing online that my government's corrupt and my computer shuts off, or I can't type online anymore. That's the point. That's what we're headed towards. But if you haven't heard the story that's out there about 764, this is government propaganda. So don't allow them to pull you into this and feel emotional about it. Does this stuff exist? Yes. All this type of stuff exists. We all know this. They put these stories out there for a reason. They don't want to inform you. Oh, guess what? There's a group 7. Guess what? There's a million 764s on the internet. We've all heard stories about groups like this and kids being targeted online. It happens every single day, and we do need online regulation. But what we really need, obviously, isn't online regulation. Is we need the end of the internet is what we need, but we're never getting to that point, right? So the next best thing, of course, will be the government bringing in digital IDs so that they could make sure your kids are safe, right? But here's the story that's out there that a lot of people are talking about. And keep in mind what they're trying to do, as I just mentioned, while they're trying to also program you into what they eventually want, which is an online ID.
To an FBI warning about a criminal network targeting kids at home. ABC News joined with some of our owned and affiliate stations across the country to investigate the threat. Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas is here with what they found. Good morning, Pierre.
George, good morning. The FBI is warning that this new network has a potential national security implication, but also in case after case, directly reaching into American homes, targeting teens and their families. Its name, 764.
Hello. I have placed 2 explosives inside of Rockville High School, okay? And if they fail to detonate, I'm just going to shoot every kid I see, okay?
This call was a hoax, but part of a series of nightmare threats terrorizing Vernon, Connecticut. Investigators determining the threats came from overseas, but with the help of a teenage girl living right in town.
he was doing these threats with her knowledge and with some of her input.
Both of them involved in a shadowy online global network called 764, which wants governments toppled and the world in chaos, but which also targets kids on social media and gaming platforms, befriending them before demanding violent and sexual content from them.
They will encourage them sometimes to commit suicide. They will encourage them to do cutting. They will encourage them to harm their pets.
They're using basically psychological warfare on children.
That's right. They gain the trust, and then they continue to build that trust to the point where they have power and the ability to blackmail the child, basically.
The girl thought the hoaxer was her boyfriend, and he convinced her to share pornography and create 764-related content, like this Barbie doll with the group's name written on its forehead.
It was very difficult to process.
I wanted to scream, "Not my child."
ABC News agreed to alter the faces and voices of the parents of the teenage girl.
Before it started, she was a child who was on the honor roll. She had a lot of friends, and then slowly that started to change.
When the girl began to resist demands, her family says extortion and threats against her ramped up.
Do we consider her a victim or a participant?
Depending on who you ask, the answer may be different.
So you sometimes have victims who then become subjects themselves because they start to go out and perpetrate acts on behalf of the individual who victimized them.
The FBI tells ABC News in an exclusive interview that it has more than 250 open investigations tied to the 764 network, reaching all 55 field offices across the nation. Nearly a dozen others have already been charged, including a young Arkansas man seen here being arrested on unrelated charges.
Man, this guy's got some weird stuff in this car, bro.
But now pleading guilty to plotting to murder a 14-year-old girl in a separate case when she stopped complying with his demands. Back in Connecticut, the parents of that teenage girl hoping that what happened to her family can be a cautionary tale for others.
If we can help just one family, then it's worth it.
Boy, Pierre, this is such a chilling story right there. So is this name 764 a clue to their motivations?
Well, the origins are in Texas. A 15-year-old boy who lives in an area code with a zip code that begins with 764 helped launch the network. And George, this group is about pain. This group is about terror. It's about bringing about harm to people. There does not seem to be any kind of financial motive that we can see.
So, of course, those are frightening stories. Seeing the Barbie doll with the 764 written on the forehead, right? These are creepy images, right? A little baby doll and these sick older men who are targeting kids in the air. Yes, all disgusting and true. Everybody out there who's followed my channel for years knows how important it is to me personally to try and protect children. I talk about satanic ritual abuse and all these rings. I talked about it before it became a popular topic. Because this is what these people in power do. The rituals involve children. They, of course, never tell you that stuff when they're talking about these deep webs. They just want you to think it's some creepy guy in a tank top with a creepy mustache who lives up the road in a trailer park who's involved in this. But guess what? Your government is involved in this. Celebrities are involved in this, as most people are starting to realize. So, what I discussed earlier is social media security. Now, it sounds like a great thing, and it is. But really what should happen is social media should be abolished. And if they abolished all social media and included my YouTube channel, I'd be thrilled. If that meant that there's no Facebook, there's no Instagram, there's no creating narcissists anymore, I would think it'd be the greatest thing. I wouldn't care if I was off the internet for good myself personally, right? But we know that's never happening. But what will happen is they will put restrictions in, like they just did in Australia. For those of you that don't know, there are social media security restrictions in Australia. And of course, the things that they're doing are they're putting stories out there like this. They're putting stories out there about people who are getting deceived from deep fakes, like old people getting scammed by people pretending to be Keanu Reeves and all these other celebrities, which I've covered over the years. 90-year-olds getting tricked, thinking that Keanu Reeves wants to marry them and take them on a date, so they're sending them thousands of dollars. And of course, the other thing is all the bullying stories that have been out there by design, where people feel sympathy for these kids are getting bullied. People need to be held accountable. But they don't realize, first, once they get all this stuff in place, it's literally a passport. When they get it in place, then they can just turn the switch a little bit in the opposite direction and start revealing themselves to you that all of this stuff wasn't to protect you or your kids. It was actually to go after you. Because once they put passports like what they have in Australia in place, and they make you provide ID so that you can go online and use Facebook or Twitter. You have to provide 100 points of identification in Australia to go online and age verification. And we've heard the stories in Texas where some of the government agents like Ted Cruz have talked about age restrictions for the internet when the government could just shut down all porn sites. How about that? Just shut down pornography in general if you're worried about your 17-year-old getting online and using porn, or keep your own kid then off the internet. There's lots of things that can obviously be done to prevent all of this stuff, but they don't want you to think too far. They want you to allow them to put the proper measures in place to protect you, and it's really not about doing that. As you'll hear in the clip I'm about to play, these are some of the things going on in Australia. That once you get this passport to go online and post stuff online, the police get access to everything you say and post on the internet. And then it turns into online abuse. You could be liable for defamation, right? Bad behavior. These are some of the words they use in this news clip I'm going to play. Think about that now. Think about 7664. Think about kids being bullied, all the stuff you've heard, people getting duped online, people being anonymous on the internet. And then when they tell you that the police are going to get access to your personal account. And then think about some of the stuff you may have posted. Maybe you were drunk one night and you told somebody off under a thing, right under a comment, oh, you're a piece of crap. I hate you, right? Oh, that sounds like it could be abusive behavior. And all of a sudden your account's frozen. All of a sudden the police are at your front door, right? This is about getting control over your thoughts, over the things you say, what you're allowed to say, what you're not. And again, bad behavior means behavioral control. Look at the hell in Australia and think about the story I just showed you.
A radical plan to crack down on social media abuse is being considered by the federal government. For more, Nine's Oliver Haig joins us live in Adelaide. Ollie, how will it work?
Layla, good morning. Essentially, it will work the same as a passport. Australians forced to submit 100 points of identification like their driver's licence or passport when using social media accounts like Facebook and Twitter. Now, police would have access to those social media accounts, and it's all part of a crackdown on online abuse. Now, users could be liable for defamation suits or even criminal prosecution, and it's all part of a plan hoping to deter people from engaging in bad behaviour. Now, the recommendations were handed down by a federal parliamentary inquiry. They're reforms that are being considered by the Morrison government, with the chairman saying there is merit to remove the veil of being anonymous.
So to get people to accept what you just saw, the government has to create stories like you saw earlier, like 764. And again, it doesn't mean that there's not a 764. It doesn't mean that there aren't groups like that. You have to think deeper. You can't just hear that and say, this guy's saying that it's not a real story, that there aren't perverts on the internet. We all know that there are. Just like Epstein's Island, Psyop, government created. Does it mean that he wasn't into that stuff? Of course not. Does it mean that those celebrities aren't? Of course not. They're feeding you this stuff for a reason. Sometimes a distraction, other times like this, to get you to comply to what they want. So if the government wants online IDs, digital IDs, which we all know, these are some of the things that they have to do to get you to comply. Story after story after story about kids getting targeted on the internet. Okay, so what can we do about it, Big Brother? Big Brother says, well, our congressmen are going to put laws in place. They are. And what are those laws going to do? Well, they're going to make it so people can't be anonymous anymore. Okay, I guess that's fair. You know, I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be doing on the internet, because everybody in their own mind's like, I'm not doing anything wrong, right? You know, I'm not doing anything wrong in the internet, right? I mean, there's probably some creepy thing that they look at, you know, that they shouldn't. But all right, let's just say in fairness, people are thinking that they're not doing anything wrong in the internet. Well, once you give up your rights and you give your 100 points of ID, and you can't be anonymous anymore, so you can't have some random sock account. That means like every comment under each post here on YouTube would be your name. Okay, it wouldn't be, you know, Nations Conspire, whatever your name might be, Buttplug65. I mean, it would literally just be your name. Right? So then you'd think twice before you post, because that's part of behavioral control. You'd say, well, my name's going to be attached to this. But say you're feeling a little out there. Maybe you had a couple glasses of wine. Maybe you're angry about a video that you see, or maybe you're angry about a news clip you see where the government's taking more control of your life, or maybe all of a sudden they're saying something you don't like, and then you write underneath there and you go, I don't agree with this. I think this is crap, and I think something should be done about it. Well, that might be taken as online abuse, defamation, or potentially a threat. And then suddenly you can't get access to your online accounts. Or even furthermore, you might find yourself in court in handcuffs for defamation. And you may actually not just pay a fee, you may end up in jail. So that's why stories like 764 are out there. It's not out there because they care about your kids. Think about that. The government created the internet. Does anyone ever think about that? What do you think? It's just floating around. There's nobody, no inventor. I mean, we know DARPA created the internet, and we know WWW, the birth of the World Wide Web, was created at CERN. That should tell you enough. But nobody think, oh, okay. So couldn't somebody just hit an off switch? Couldn't somebody who's behind it, whoever this Oz is, couldn't they just go and say, hey, there's all these disgusting sites out there. Let's shut them down. Just like all the stories about cyber attackers. Oh, you can't find them. You know who they are? Oh, they have some coding where they're able to block the government who created the internet from finding them, from doing these horrible things. Well, of course, it's because the government's doing it themselves, right? Or if they play on your heartstrings like they're trying to do with the Republicans, right? The Republicans, they're convincing people like Ted Cruz. They're saying, hey, kids are getting online. They're getting watching porn and stuff like that. Instead of saying, hey, the parents should do something about this. Parents should maybe cut off the internet. Parents should maybe do some type of restriction. Parents should maybe try to control their kids' behavior. Even forget that. How about the government just shut down the porn site? Oh, well, they can't shut down the porn industry. Oh, they can't shut down the porn industry. Why is that? We need that? The world would be a lot better place without it. Think of all the crap that we see floating around, the advertisements and all this stuff, trying to make people lust every 5 seconds. I mean, no, we couldn't live without that, right? There's obviously ways to get this stuff done. So these stories aren't out there so that you go and you say, oh, my kid, 764, and you're going to go warn them about 764, right? And your kid's going to roll his eyes and go, okay, mom, okay, dad, I hear you, blah, blah, blah. And you're still going to be up at night worrying about it because every day the government's going to air propaganda like this. And they're going to go, 764 is growing, 764 is growing. And you're going to go, I got to warn him again. You warn him again. He rolls his eyes. He goes out one night. You're like, I'm going to look at his computer and see what he's looking at. You don't like what he's looking at. The government goes, look, hey, this is going too far. We need to do something about this. And you go, I agree. We got to do something about it. This group can't be stopped. You hear story after story about Jane Doe, John Doe, George Glass, make-believe characters who are doing this stuff, who are getting lured in by the deep web of 764. And then you'll say, we can't have people anonymous. This will stop all this stuff. I'm like, I'm on board. Psh! Next thing you know, one day when you're online, a week after this law gets passed, and all of a sudden you go on and you go, how come my name isn't, Thunder Thighs 33 anymore? How come it says my real name? It says George Glass. Oh, because we've changed it. Everything now with your 100 points of identification have given us the authority to change your accounts, even your YouTube channels, to be your name because it's you, right? Or if you still have your cool little YouTube channel name, we'll put your real name under it so you can be held accountable for what you say, right? And all of a sudden you type something and you're going, okay, well, I guess it's not a big deal. I mean, I wanted to have privacy, but I got rid of being anonymous online. I guess, all right, it's worth it for the kids. And then you just post something and say, I disagree. All right, there'll be something out there. The government freezes bank accounts. You go, I disagree. We need to stop this. Next thing you know, the FBI is at your door. You're under arrest. You're serving 10 years in jail, right? Because of what you wrote, because they're going to monitor, control it. And bad behavior will not be tolerated. And they don't mean bad behavior like predators on the web. They mean bad behavior like people who aren't compliant to the government. So I've seen this story circulating. I understand when you see a story how you can get pulled and you go, oh my goodness. And so I try to teach people who listen to my channel. You got to watch it knowing it's propaganda, even if it pulls on your heartstrings. We all care about children. Nobody wants a child to get lured in, but we all should know better that there's ways to stop these people and the government does nothing to stop them. You see some of the guys and some of the stories that get arrested and you just go, they couldn't stop this guy. Oh, he had thousands of pictures on his computer and he was visiting thousands of chat rooms. Oh, the government couldn't access these chat rooms and arrest people immediately. I mean, give me a break. Of course they could. Of course they could, but most of the people are really government operatives anyway, and most of the chat rooms are run by the government themselves because they're the ones who are doing the trafficking, right? Because that's what your Central Intelligence Agency actually does, and I won't say more than that because, well, I'm not looking for a knock at my door, although at this point, obviously, I'm just screaming into the wind. You know, after all the years of doing this stuff, too many people have gotten sucked in on the left and the right. They believe these stories. They don't realize that the news is there to manufacture you, and the next thing you know, these people end up giving up their rights because they think it's the better thing to do and the right thing to do for the kids. They don't realize, hey, why don't you just raise your kids right? Why don't you get your kids off the internet? Keep your kids away from other kids then that are on the internet. Don't send your kids to the public school when at school they have internet time, right? But they tell you, oh, your kid's going to be dumb, right? Oh, we're only living in the dumbest time period ever. All these kids could access all these apps and work on the computer, but none of them even know how to grow a tomato in a garden. None of them even know that you need water for a plant to grow. None of them even know what photosynthesis is anymore. Right? So it's actually the opposite, but they convince you that it's not, oh, everyone's so smart because of the internet. No, you're becoming dependent on technology for all the answers instead of using your own brain. So 764, more government propaganda. The reason behind it is what you just saw. getting you prepared and conditioned to end anyone being anonymous on the internet. That's the goal. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.